The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is difficult to encounter even in hundreds of thousands of eons. Now we have seen, heard and received it. May we realize the true meaning of the Tathagata. To liberate all sentient beings, please generate the supreme bodhicitta. Okay, next we'll continue with the Udāna Sutra. We're currently teaching the Udāna Sutra and we should be in the 12th chapter, the chapter on faith. This chapter on faith mainly teaches the entire process and content of spiritual practice. So for each of us, we are all practitioners, so this is very important. So let's continue today. Today we'll cover by this path have crossed, will cross, and are crossing the river, purifying all those to be taught, ending the stream of birth and death. To know the distinctions of all realms, the one with vision spoke this path. This passage mainly teaches that the one path mentioned above, this one path is actually for all the Buddhas and their retinues of the future, past and present, the Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It's the single most important method for them to liberate themselves from the river of samsara. The most important method is this path. The one path mentioned above was actually used in the past to cross samsara, such as by Dipankara Buddha and his retinue. And in the future, those who will cross samsara, meaning Maitreya Buddha and his retinue, and now in the present Buddha's time, meaning our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, they all use this method to cross the four great floods and attain liberation. So they mainly purified all the sentient beings to be taught. Through this path, they helped all those karmic beings remove the afflictive obscurations in their mind streams and become purified. Through this path, they ended the cycle of birth and death. The commentary mentions something like the lower realms or the entire flood of the five aggregates. This entire stream of birth and death is completely eliminated. Also, to understand what? To understand all realms. Here, realm means disposition, nature, as well as possibilities and impossibilities, the seven places and so forth. All these distinctions of phenomena were fully explained by the one with vision. One with vision refers to our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, who possesses the supreme wisdom eye, the noble path he teaches here. So we should understand that the Buddhas of the past, present and future all attained liberation through the teaching of the Four Noble Truths or through the soul path of emptiness. I think it's mentioned in the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra says that the Buddha appears in the world solely for a great cause. What is this great cause? It's to open the Buddha's knowledge and vision and to enter the path of the Buddha's knowledge and vision. I remember when we taught the Lotus Sutra, we really emphasized this, opening the Buddha's knowledge and vision. The great cause of the Buddha's appearance is this great event that manifests. What is this great event? The Buddha doesn't appear in the world for other purposes. He doesn't have other business. In fact, whether it's the great masters of the past or the great masters living today, the cause of their appearing to benefit beings is to benefit beings through teaching the Dharma, helping them cross samsara. This is the only purpose. So now as we're studying here, everyone is studying, and in their mind streams they truly gain these experiences and realizations of the Dharma. So what is our cause and purpose? It's to guide sentient beings. Around us there are so many sentient beings, and they also need the nourishment of the Buddha's nectar like wondrous Dharma. They also need it, so our future purpose should be like this. Some people here, after studying Buddhism, their goal is to attain liberation themselves. Of course this is good, but what's the point of just liberating yourself? It's not so you can sleep in every day and enjoy worldly pleasures. That's not the purpose. We should look around us and see there are so many sentient beings. Through genuine guidance, helping them attain liberation is extremely important. I think it's mentioned in the Samyukta Agama. Thus the true teaching appears, cutting off the stream of birth and death. What's the purpose of the teaching? It's to cut off being samsara, nothing else. If the Buddha's teachings were just like worldly knowledge, spreading a culture, or just letting people understand some simple ideas, then its significance wouldn't be very great. So in our current era, especially young people, sometimes they may not even know themselves, especially if they've attended schools before. From childhood, they've taken this class and that class in school, but many of these classes are just for life, for making a living, to demonstrate their own value. Beyond that, they don't have a greater, farther, or broader vision. They don't have this goal. Especially those of us studying Mahayana Buddhism, we should examine ourselves. Now I've shaved my head and donned the monastic robes, and I've begun listening to the Buddha's teachings. What do I want to do in the future? This is also very important. For lay people, why did you take refuge? After taking refuge, do you want to free yourself from samsara, free yourself from some mental issues like depression or anxiety? Is that the purpose? Or do you truly want to gain this especially wonderful Dharma, and in the future, even if it's just with one or two people around you, help them gain this benefit? This is extremely important.
Just
as the waters of the Ganges flow into the great ocean, the path taught by the one of vast wisdom is to attain the deathless fruit. So this verse means, today my offering substances are quite abundant, so I didn't specifically place them up here. Sometimes a little effort is still important. Below, we use the previous principle to explain how the Buddha's one path can benefit beings, or in other words, ultimately, it's a means to attain liberation. This meaning is illustrated through an analogy. It's like the Ganges. Everyone knows it's one of India's 4 great rivers, but according to some commentaries like the Udāna Vaga or something, it mentions 4 great rivers flowing into the ocean. Among the 4 great rivers is the Ganges. Their sources, we've also discussed this before, come from different torrents, but they all eventually flow into the ocean. The Ganges and the other 4 great rivers, although their entire courses are very long, ultimately, unlike other small streams and rivers that dry up midway, they will definitely reach the ocean. All rivers flow into the sea. They will certainly reach the ocean. This principle illustrates that the Buddha, who possesses vast and boundless wisdom, the Buddha of omniscient wisdom, or the Buddha who knows all phenomena completely, the one path he taught, which we mentioned earlier, this one path actually enables all these sentient beings to attain what? To attain the deathless fruit of nirvana. What's mainly taught here, no matter who the practitioner is, their ultimate goal, as we just discussed, must have their own objective. This objective is very important. For example, people studying in the worldly realm, some will become teachers in the future, some will pursue research in a certain worldly field in math and science or the humanities. Everyone has their own purpose, and of course, there are various differences in ultimately achieving that purpose. But in any case, having your own ideal in advance is important. Similarly, just as the Ganges flows into the ocean, we rely on the Buddha's ultimate path. On one hand, we ourselves can enter into and attain the deathless fruit. At minimum, attain a noble fruit, even if you don't attain a noble fruit. Our previous teachers often said that when you're about to die, not having regrets, gaining such a path is also extremely important. If you don't even have this, if you have no goal at all, just like other groups, living in a daze every day, just getting by day, just muddling through like this, actually this approach is very unreasonable. So through analogy, he explains that actually what the Buddha taught, as we discussed earlier, is just like the Dharma we discussed before. The Buddha taught the true path, suffering, emptiness, impermanence, and no self, no doer. This can free one from samsara. It should be mentioned in the Dharma Samgati Sūtra that the Dharma taught by the Buddha in the final analysis can be said to be included in suffering, emptiness, impermanence, and the selflessness of having no agent. So we who study later should at least have certainty about these aspects. First, regarding the impermanence of all conditioned things, you yourself feel that indeed all of life is suffering, this principle. And truly there's nothing substantially real about phenomena. Everything is emptiness. Especially in our Tibetan Buddhism, the reasoning methods of the Middle Way are very famous worldwide. After many Western teachers study the Middle Way, they gain tremendous benefit from it. The principle of impermanence, we started studying this first. The other day when we were joking around, a Khenpo said, I have to handle many things myself because the people around me are impermanent. Whether they'll stay or not is unknown. They're impermanent. Finally, later, they joked and said, so you're permanent and everyone around you is impermanent. What she meant was, she doesn't know whether their commitment to serving the Sangha will endure. Maybe after a while, they'll leave. So it's better to rely on myself. What she meant was a relatively enduring commitment, not eternally permanent. But the other Dharma teachers said, oh, so you're permanent? You've studied the Udāna Sutra very successfully this time. So if we think the people around us are impermanent, but we ourselves are permanent, then maybe our studies aren't going so well. The same goes for selflessness. Throughout the world, from any perspective, there is no self. Especially, I think, the entering the Middle Way, when I first came here and studied it, was very beneficial, extremely beneficial, especially for many of you now. Perhaps when you first start studying, it's very important. If at the beginning of your study you're in a distracted state and don't develop faith in the Dharma, then the entire karmic momentum going forward is already damaged and won't be very successful. But if from the beginning you have faith in the three jewels and interest in emptiness, then your practice will likely be quite successful. So this is like the Ganges flowing into the ocean. We should practice with a goal. This is very important.
강식 정보 건라 특제바 원천 마투 추진 콜로 콜 쪼발 하나 만남 드름zat바 트빔 타르션 텔라 샴츠르로
With compassion for all beings, turning the Dharma wheel never heard before, rescuing humans and gods, I bow before the one with limits. This mainly teaches on one hand about the Buddha's qualities, and on one hand explains the meaning of the Buddha turning the Dharma wheel never heard before. The Buddha has compassion for all sentient beings without bias. For all beings, his compassion extends to all beings. He has compassion for all beings. Then the Buddha turned the Dharma wheel never heard before. It had never been turned before. For example, among the rishis, there was Rishi Bharadvaja. He also turned the Dharma wheel, but the Dharma he turned was a worldly Dharma wheel that couldn't liberate from birth and death. So the profound and vast Dharma wheel taught by the Buddha was unprecedented, such a Dharma wheel. As for turning the Dharma wheel, actually, turning means to revolve from the Buddha's mind stream to the Bodhisattvas. From the Bodhisattva's mind streams to us, continuously flowing like this without interruption. A few days ago, someone told me, your teaching this time is a bit different. You're explaining the literal meaning for the lamas and nuns. It's not like before when you explained directly after finishing. They hadn't heard it explained this way before, so they said for some people just beginning, it might be somewhat beneficial. For those who've studied a long time, there's no need for such detailed explanation. Some told me this, but in any case, the live audience does have some influence. I'm still speaking for the majority, for different audiences. So here it explains the Buddha's turning, directly revolving in the mind stream, like this. When the Dharma wheel was turned back then, our commentary mentions Katyayana. Katyayana requested the turning of the Dharma wheel. Of course, in other accounts, it was the gods who requested the turning of the Dharma wheel. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, during the 49 days when he didn't turn the Dharma wheel, others, including Shakra and Shvara, offered conch shells and Dharma wheels and requested him to turn the Dharma wheel. The Buddha turned the Dharma wheel in this way, and he rescued and protected people, rescued humans and gods. This rescuing and protecting the Buddha, because he attained complete sovereignty, he can fully rescue and protect. In what way? Like a mother with an only child, unconditionally protecting her child, rescuing and protecting human and celestial beings. Why specifically humans and gods? Because humans and gods, actually, if the Buddha turns the Dharma wheel, they have the karmic connection to contemplate. If it's other animals or hell beings, even if you teach them very well, they simply can't think rationally. Not to mention using computers skillfully, though nowadays some monkeys can use computers and phones quite well. Nowadays we see some, including some fish, are also somewhat intelligent, and maybe hungry ghosts and hell beings also have some intelligence. But to truly gain liberation and contemplate the Dharma, for this, humans and gods are very important. So finally, the one with limits means one who has reached the edge of samsara, who no longer needs to wander in samsara. Before such a Buddha, the last existence, we make prostrations. It's like this here. Because in some sutras, Actually, what was recorded later sometimes has the Buddha proclaiming his own qualities. Why prostrate in this way? Because the Buddha possesses all qualities, is free from all faults, and moreover, he has benefited immeasurable beings. Making prostrations before such a noble one is also this meaning. So the general meaning of this verse can also be explained this way. Then, regarding the place where the Dharma wheel was turned, we often say the first place where the Buddha turned the Dharma wheel was Varanasi, one could say, or the deer park. It's said this way. But why is this deer park called the deer park? I've explained this in other courses before, based on a story from the Buddha's past life. There was a king at the deer park. Once when this king went out, 1,000 deer were caught in his nets. After catching them, they planned to kill them all at the same time. At that time, our teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, was one of the leader of those deer. At that time, this deer leader, the Bodhisattva, told the king, "The weather is so hot now. If you kill them all at the same time, it probably won't be of any use. Could you perhaps kill one deer each day? In this way, perhaps in all respects, at that time there probably weren't refrigerators. If all 1,000 deer were killed at once, the king probably couldn't eat them all. It would be rather troublesome." When the deer king made this request, the king agreed. After agreeing, every day one deer from among the 1,000 would go there. At that time, Devadatta was also the deer king of 500 deer. The Buddha was the deer king of 500 deer. Each deer under these two was sent to their kitchen. One time, under Devadatta, who had become a deer king, a deer was about to be killed. She was pregnant. After becoming pregnant, she requested from Devadatta's past life, "The little deer in my belly, after it's born I'll go." Is that possible? At that time, he didn't agree. When he didn't agree, she was especially sad. She told the deer king, who was the Buddha's past life. The Buddha's past life, as the deer king said, "Then you don't need to go. I'll tell the king. I'll go in your place." Then the Buddha's past life told another deer king and went in her place. At that time, it seems their cook, the one who killed the deer, had already recognized the deer king. He explained the reason for this situation to the king. After explaining to the king at that time discovered that an animal, a deer king, had such great compassion for his subordinates, using his own life to take their place. If I, as a human king, don't even have the compassion of an animal, then later he issued an order that all people were not allowed to hunt, and eating deer meat was also strictly forbidden. At that time, the entire country couldn't eat deer meat. For this reason, this place was called the deer park. This deer park, back in the day, whether rishis, shramanas, or brahmins, many people with a certain level of realization could stay there, but some unwholesome people couldn't stay. It's such an especially blessed and sacred place. When His Holiness went there in 1990, he also taught Dharma there, but when we went at that time, we were quite rushed. His Holiness gave an empowerment to the students of the Varanasi school, then gave some teachings, and then we went on to other places. At that time, we really wanted to stay there for a while. Now, there are some statues of the 5 bhikshus. Actually, if we go in the future, we should visit the deer park, Vajrasana, and the deer park. If we could stay for 7 days and do a retreat properly at the place where the Buddha truly turned the Dharma wheel, I think this is extremely important because the blessings of these places. At the deer park, generally good people can stay, but bad people can't. Relatively speaking, I sometimes think we don't dare say everyone at our larung is good, but the majority are probably people interested in practice, and in their mind stream they have various realizations. There are such people. So this place also has distinctions. Some places are always inhabited by butchers, people who constantly kill, especially savage beings. Some places, since ancient times, have been especially blessed and are often gathering places for great masters. So the deer park, whether in Buddhist history or now, is indeed an especially good place. The Buddha's first turning of the Dharma wheel was also at this place. The second turning was at Vulture Peak, and the third turning was at Vaishal and various places. The Vajrayana Dharma wheels of the Mahayana were in different places, all sorts of places. Everyone should also be clear about this. Below we'll discuss
Geva mayan xum yang number pan gunner darlang chertim number tar denir tokdang shopa jivr sha.
One should discern the 3 wholesome thoughts and eliminate the 3 unwholesome thoughts. When conceptual thought and examination are pacified, it's like dust suppressed by rain. So here, what's being taught? What's discussed below is that in the process of practice we should discern 3 types of wholesome thoughts, wholesome discriminations. After discerning, what can we eliminate? Eliminate the 3 types of unwholesome thoughts. Looking at the commentary, it's mainly the mind of delusion, the mind of harm, and the mind of malice. And these 3 are the 3 unwholesome thoughts. Then the 3 wholesome thoughts are non-delusion, non-harm, and non-malice. The Madhyama Agama says there are 3 wholesome thoughts: the thought of non-desire, the thought of non-anger, and the thought of non-harm. That is, no greed, no anger, and no mind to harm others. Perhaps anger and harm differ in degree. For example, if I'm angry, I myself am especially furious, sometimes so angry that I cry. Yesterday I saw someone crying. I said, "Why?" Because a customer kept scolding her. Later she was too embarrassed to respond, so she felt very sad inside and kept crying. But certainly there's anger in her heart. This kind of anger doesn't harm the other, she just cries. This is called the thought of non-anger. Then the thought of harm means wanting to harm others. I'm very angry and want to harm them. Harm and anger differ in the mental factors. So here we should first discern which are wholesome thoughts and which are unwholesome. These wholesome thoughts, there are 3 types. We should try our best to accept them: the thought of non-desire, non-anger, and non-harm. For a practitioner, this is truly very important. Then we should eliminate the 3 unwholesome thoughts. Actually, the commentary also mentions there are many other thoughts. Wholesome and unwholesome thoughts are all there. But if we categorize by type, they can be included within these. It's like poisons, there are many, but they're included in the 5 poisons or 3 poisons. Unwholesome thoughts can also be included in these. At the same time, conceptual thought and examination are pacified. This conceptual thought is the coarse discrimination of the first dhyana, and in the second dhyana is examination, the subtle, fine characteristics, the discriminations of the second dhyana and above, these kinds of thoughts. So gradually, for example, through the first dhyana, the coarse discriminations of the desire realm are pacified. Then examination, which when the first dhyana is attained through higher and higher meditative absorptions, the lower states are manifested and discriminations are pacified. Then in this way one can attain the noble path. This noble path naturally manifests, just like when the clouds are gone, the sun naturally appears. So this analogy explains it's like dust that's been raised up. When heavy rain falls, it's all pressed down. Through wholesome thoughts and through meditative practice, all the unwholesome discriminations in our mind stream, or neutral discriminations, some might possibly be eliminated. If sustained by wisdom, they're eliminated. Some are suppressed so they won't arise. So I think sometimes when we listen to teachings this way, perhaps everyone gets tired sometimes, but this is also a method. When we listen to teachings first, during the time of listening, many scattered behaviors are given up. So sometimes I forcibly make myself either do a translation or teach a class. It seems if there aren't these teachings. In the first half of this year, I came to Larung several times, but it seemed every day without classes, just reciting the aspiration of Samantabhadra once. It seems my own recitation power is very weak. Reciting once a day, I need to recite the aspiration of Samantabhadra every day, but the first day I can, the second day it seems I can't. So sometimes when people practice and study, collective power is truly great. Studying worldwide now isn't like before when Tibetan Lamas taught others one by one. It's all collective study. Collective study has tremendous strength. So many things may seem quite difficult, but actually they're very beneficial for ourselves. Whether we're teaching or listening to the Dharma, in this process, everyone has a kind of external collective power. We can't possibly go online with our own discriminations, thinking all sorts of things, or making phone calls, constantly distracted. There's no opportunity for that. So gradually, if we familiarize ourselves with this, our mind streams will gradually get better. Getting better is a bit difficult, getting worse is easy. Sometimes there are some Tibetan idioms. They don't work well in Chinese. Chinese idioms sometimes don't work well in Tibetan. Actually, teaching in this kind of setting is also very challenging and painful, you know? Struggling in a contradictory world, you know?
Tene semlar namto nye samjo chinko yantan gave martin chikita.
When translating this word into Chinese, doesn't seem very successful. So
Tennis and Larnamto near the Vlamishan Ragla, Dela Raglib, dancing some more Namla Yurtacha, Demba Lirki, Sadmit Gumbra Shah.
when the mind ceases all discriminations, one touches the joy of Bodhi. Focus on the three concentrations. Cultivate the truths and immeasurables. This mainly teaches that in our process of cultivating virtue, when the mind ceases all afflicted discriminations, all the various three unwholesome thoughts we mentioned earlier, first eliminate these unwholesome thoughts, then eliminate these neutral thoughts, and then afterward, finally, even the wholesome thoughts. When practicing Dzogchen, finally we eliminate the 9 types of discrimination. All of these, including even wholesome mind at that time, are also eliminated. Then finally we ourselves can contact, or we can attain, the joy of Bodhi. This joy of Bodhi isn't the worldly joy of eating, drinking and playing. Rather, what is it? All attachments are extinguished, and then a special joy, great bliss, is attained. This great bliss, of course a worldly tactile sensation, a worldly experience, a pleasurable feeling, can hardly represent it or express it. Attaining such a bliss, at that time, it seems some people from a naked ascetic sect asked the Buddha, among all discriminations, what can be relinquished? The Buddha at that time said, you can use the 3 concentrations or the 4 immeasurables. This is very important. Focus on the 3 concentrations here. Focus, or as the commentary says, especially attached to, perhaps focus is better. Focus on the 3 concentrations. The 3 concentrations are the concentration of emptiness, the concentration of signlessness, and the concentration of wishlessness. Practice of what are commonly called the 3 doors of liberation: emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness. If you study Mahayana, perhaps it's even better to contemplate. Then cultivate the truths and immeasurables. This word truth in Tibetan refers to the immeasurables arising from peace. But in the verse it's Denpa Leje, and in the Tibetan commentary it seems to be Jinpa Lege. If it's Jinpa Lege, it might be easier to understand. But here in Tibetan, the commentary mentions the 4 immeasurables of truth. Immeasurables of truth means the 4 immeasurables are rising from ultimate truth. What we usually talk about, immeasurable loving kindness and immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy and immeasurable equanimity. These can be attained. Why are they called immeasurable? Because the sentient beings we focus on are immeasurable. The merit and virtue we cultivate are also immeasurable, and ultimately the benefit to beings is also immeasurable and boundless. That's why they're called the 4 immeasurables. Moreover, these 4 immeasurables respectively eliminate what we mentioned earlier: the mind of harm, the mind of anger, the mind of greed, and the mind of worry. These minds can also be eliminated. So when we truly practice, actually practicing the 4 immeasurables, practicing the emptiness of the 3 doors of liberation, this is very important. If we practice for just a short time, eventually we ourselves can manifest various states that can appear. In the past there was Master Zibo, very famous in Chan Buddhism. He especially loved meditation. As he practiced, eventually he himself had many extraordinary experiences. What kind of experiences? For example, in the afternoon he would read the Prajnaparamita Sūtra. When reading the Prajnaparamita, eventually he could see completely, even though it had already gotten dark. In the afternoon, he kept reading and reading. It got dark, no sun, no moon, but he kept reading. Someone nearby came and said, "It's so dark, how can you read?" At that moment, he generated a discriminating thought, and then he couldn't read the sutra in front of him. He couldn't see it. So in a state without discriminating thoughts, any kind of state can also appear. I've heard that nowadays some practitioners, just when using computers, originally the screen wasn't a touch screen, but through their mental intention, it might have some connection with touch, and eventually, completely, they can operate the computer through touch. Later, if someone nearby reminds them, they suddenly generate a discriminating thought, and immediately that state from before disappears. So when we practice, actually many things exceed our imagination. Just like now, Whether in electronics or networking, these have already exceeded our imagination. Many things also appear in the external world. Actually, as practitioners, if our mind is extremely calm, we've already used the right methods, and we often pray to our guru and the three jewels. If our mind is very calm, this pure, virtuous, karmic power and this unfailing power of dependent arising will definitely arise in our mind stream, and all sorts of wondrous signs. This can completely appear. So everyone also shouldn't think, this is just Buddhist talk. Nowadays, it probably won't happen. Science is so advanced. Actually, in some external aspects, science is indeed beyond imagination very good. But regarding our inner world and cutting off birth and death in samsara, science is completely blank. There's nothing to learn from it. In this regard, it has absolutely nothing. No research, no results, nothing. So as practitioners, on one hand, we might occasionally understand the various situations in the world, their ways and methods. That's also good. But more importantly, through effort, can we contact the joy of Bodhi, the transcendent joy. Our kind of joy is different from worldly sensory pleasures like, today I drank tea and felt so comfortable. It's like Atisha in the questions and answers with disciples. Atisha and Dromtonpa, when they were together, they would sometimes brew tea. When the tea was brewed really well, he would begin. There was a disciple in front who kept asking questions. While asking, Atisha would tell many stories, but not stories like ours. Stories about Dromtonpa's past lives and so forth. You should look at it sometime. In his questions and answers with disciples, there are many stories between Dromtonpa and them throughout their lifetimes. Actually, for great beings, drinking tea is joyful. Now, several religions, Christianity, Catholicism, Islam, Buddhism, these several religions have joined together to make some tea. This tea, the name is written this way, several religions together. Then when they promote it, they say, if you drink this tea, you can enjoy the meditative flavors of various religions. But whether this can be enjoyed or not, it's hard to say. Maybe it can. But we're not just about worldly pleasures like drinking tea and saying, this tea is good, this coffee is good. On one hand, we can enjoy these worldly pleasures, but more importantly, in our Mahayana Buddhism, there are many, many things that, when you accept them in your heart, far exceed these worldly pleasures. This is also something we should all aspire to. We just mentioned touching the joy of Bodhi. If we don't touch the joy of Bodhi at all, and only touch worldly pleasures, then our level is really quite low.
Samba Namji, Nixum Raptor, Charter, Shirp, Sundang, Sunji, Topang, Dan, Trandan, Nyamja, Tanzan, Laga, Way, Jiktin, Kietan, Jigbar, Tone, no, Jiktin, Kietan, Jigbar, Tone, no, Kunde Raptor, Namjur, Derek Yin, Jiktin, Tama, Lagper, Tokir, Ne, Jiktin, Tarson, Power Shinji, Jut.
Without the commentary, the verses of this Udāna Sutra are also somewhat difficult to understand. Possessing mindfulness and wisdom, untying knots with the three, leaving the three places, the sword of wisdom, the power of diligence, possessing mindfulness, joyful in concentration, understanding the arising and ceasing of the world, liberation among all phenomena, penetrating the edge of the world, called reaching the other shore in the world. All right, not much left, okay. So what's being taught here? Possessing mindfulness and wisdom, untying knots. This possessing mindfulness means having right mindfulness. They possess right mindfulness. For example, when we see forms, there's no pleasure or displeasure. We're in a state of equanimity. This is explained as possessing mindfulness. A wise person always maintains right mindfulness. This right mindfulness isn't like us when we see something beautiful. Wow, so happy. Or when we see something ugly, we immediately generate anger. It's not like this. They always possess right knowledge and right mindfulness, maintaining the stability of their state. This is called possessing mindfulness. Then wisdom refers to the wise. The wise actually benefit themselves and others. This is called being wise. It's not someone who harms others every day or speaks ill of others every day. Some people nowadays online speak ill of others every day. Others sarcastically say, great wise one, and so on. And they themselves even more believe they're great wise ones. Some old men, some very foolish people, and others call them great realized ones, great wise ones, this teacher, that teacher, and they truly believe they're wise. But what's meant here is truly benefiting others and oneself. Actually, these people, if they curse others and harm others every day, they themselves definitely won't be happy, and even their lives are in danger. So this isn't called being wise. So the wise who possess right mindfulness can easily untie knots. This knot at the end refers to afflictions and latent afflictions, root afflictions and latent ones. So they can untie all these afflictions. They with the three leave the three places. The three refers to the three trainings. Of course, three has other interpretations, but through the three trainings of discipline, concentration, and wisdom, they leave the three places. The three places refer to the three realms, leaving the three realms of samsara. Of course, some say it's the lower realms, but probably the three realms is better, because if they have the three trainings, they leave the three places or three realms, then what do they possess? They possess the sword of wisdom. Sword of wisdom, this sword also has the meaning of weapon. They have three weapons of wisdom, three swords. What are the three swords? One is the sword of the wisdom of learning, one is the sword of the wisdom of contemplation, and one is the sword of the wisdom of meditation. The three swords of the wisdom of learning, contemplation, and meditation. And the power of diligence is the four right efforts, or the bodhisattva's power of diligence, without laziness. Here there's possessing mindfulness, and this possessing mindfulness here mainly refers to the five faculties of the Noble Path. The commentary explains it this way. It's not very easy to understand. This possessing mindfulness means having right mindfulness, meaning these qualities of the Noble Path. And joyful in concentration means eliminating distraction, delighting in concentration. So with these qualities, the wise with these qualities understand the arising and ceasing of the world, understanding all the various arising and ceasing in the world. Then they attain liberation among all phenomena, attaining liberation from the entire coarse and subtle samsaric phenomena. The previous understanding the arising and ceasing of the world mainly refers to the qualities of realization. The later liberation among phenomena refers to the qualities of abandonment, complete abandonment. So in this way, penetrating the edge of the world, penetrating the final edge of samsara, what can this be called? In the world, reaching the other shore, from this life to that life, meaning reaching nirvana without remainder. So this entire passage through our transcendent practice, of course, these methods, these require wisdom, require diligence, require right mindfulness, require concentration. After this, actually understanding the arising and ceasing of the world, and at the same time gaining liberation ourselves, we can reach the other shore of the world. From then on, we no longer need to wander in samsara. This is also extremely important for us, because as a practitioner, can we abandon our skull in this life? As mentioned in the words of my perfect teacher, abandoning the skull. This lifetime is the last time I abandon my skull. It shouldn't be that this time it's a human skull, next time it's a yak skull, and then after that a fish skull. Do fish have heads? They should, right? Fish heads. For whoever abandons, no longer needing to wander in birth and death in samsara, this is the most joyful. The last verse. This mainly after already explaining the worldly and transcendent principles. Here also through practicing the Dharma, we ultimately attain an extremely perfect result, mainly teaching this principle. Practicing the Eightfold Noble Path of peace, the straight path to the deathless, those who seek joy in this way, praise and fame increase day by day. Because through our practice, what do we attain? We attain peace. Peace means pacifying all the turmoil of samsara. This kind of meditation, this is called peace. The Eightfold Noble Path, we all know, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. These Eightfold Noble Path, we encountered this earlier. When I look at your tutoring, some of you probably understand and some look it up yourselves and recite it. That's actually quite good, because in this Eightfold Noble Path, actually all our good practices are all there. including your view, your thinking, your speech, your actions, your livelihood, your entire mindfulness and cultivation. All these can be included. Of course, the true Eightfold Noble Path, as mentioned before, truly appears at the time of the path of seeing. But in our current life, there are also some similar paths. There are. Especially when we practice the 4 dharmas of Shramanas. Only in my dharma is there the Eightfold Noble Path. This is mentioned in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, I believe. There are the 4 Shramanas' names. This is the path of liberation. It says in practicing the Buddha's teachings, there's something called the Eightfold Noble Path. Actually, this Eightfold Noble Path also has the 4 Shramanas, the 4 dharmas of Shramanas we mentioned earlier. Then this is the true path of liberation. Such a path of liberation is very important. We should practice the Eightfold Noble Path. So what is it? It's the straight path, nothing winding or crooked. Just like yesterday's geese flying straight toward the lake. When doing the oral Dharma presentation yesterday, everyone presented the Dharma differently. Some were very forceful, some were, how to say... The straight path to the deathless, attaining the deathless. Ultimately, we won't be like now, arising and ceasing. We don't need this, attaining the nectar Dharma of nirvana, without death. Those who seek joy in this way, those who seek joy or liberation in this way in this lifetime also receive various praises. Actually, we practitioners don't seek fame. It's not like worldly people. This isn't needed. But their virtue, their true virtue, when discovered by outsiders, is worthy of praise. This is also acceptable. Just as the Buddha also received praise as the teacher of gods and humans, receiving praise from the entire world, whether Manjushra Rawangchi Bodhisattva or Maitreya Bodhisattva, they also received the praise of gods and humans, including our great masters of the past, especially many great masters of our Tibetan Buddhism. In their writings, a considerable portion praises Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, praises Shantideva, praises the Buddha, praises their own gurus. Actually, this kind of praise also shows the extraordinary significance of this. When people receive praise, there are 2 types of praise. One type is having no qualities at all, but receiving praise based on empty reputation. This has no meaning. Another type is when they truly possess qualities. Such praise is very meaningful. So by practicing through the Eightfold Noble Path, after practice, one attains liberation from samsara. In this way, one is joyful when dying and joyful when living, long cultivating all pure conduct, well practicing the Eightfold Noble Path, like escaping a burning house, approaching death without worry or regret. It should be mentioned in the Samyukta Agama. The meaning is, if we cultivate pure conduct for a long time and practice the Eightfold Noble Path well, it's like escaping from a fire pit. When approaching death, you won't have regrets. Not only no regrets when approaching death, but also in our daily life we are very joyful. This kind of practitioner is very happy in everyday life. Actually, whether practice is good or not, I think it's related to this person's mindset. People with a bad mindset, everything they say is about others' faults, and their own mind is also very messy and chaotic. Life is a mess, and the whole process is somewhat chaotic. But if their practice is very good, they know this world is like a dream, like an illusion. Whether joyful or suffering, there's no need. So why not be cheerful instead? Being happy is very good. In the past, in 1989, His Holiness went to Beijing, to the Advanced Buddhist Academy, but at that time he didn't take me. Previously he took me, including 1986 and 1987 I went. Then in 1989 he didn't take me, but took Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro and Khenpo Tenzin to Beijing. At first I felt a little bit sad, and His Holiness wasn't there. Later I comforted myself and thought I should study more. Then I taught the adornment of the middle way and the entering the middle way. At that time there was a Khenpo called Pema Sangpo, who lived near where above the Lotus district there's a stupa near there. At that time it was just a scattered house, nothing much. I went to him to request teachings because when I was teaching, a few people wanted to hear the debate text between Mipham Rinpoche and Draka Geshe, that sunlight of debate and reply. So I went to receive the oral transmission. That old Khenpo's house was also quite dilapidated. What he ate was just a little tsampa, but he said he seemed to live very happily. He said, because he often praised himself quite a bit. Because my practice is very good, I stay here. Otherwise, if I went to these villages down below, if I wanted to eat ginseng fruit or butter cakes, it would be no problem. And then he was very happy. At that time I felt it was somewhat rare. Later, it seems His Holiness also once praised him, saying at a monastery nearby when His Holiness went out, it seems when that Lama was in retreat, he taught them, and it seems everyone was very happy about something. His Holiness heard about it. So we often made this Lama a kind of symbol of happiness for everyone. His Holiness would also sometimes casually have fun and talk about it, asking him to talk about himself. He often said, when I was young, I was extremely good looking. When I was young, my voice was especially pleasant. When I was young, I was rather proud and often laughed at others, so some people weren't too happy with me.
ngolok chaga taga dewan gan chaga nga chi marga nare divan de zip to gwakend de gaze yerde nam de nare nga chi gwakend de nare de loro navzrna yoti de taga ta lama yivjan no re tari dir kornge khongriga har jorja ikend de nga chi kem ke nare kambo dazr ke nga chom ke ga ya ke.
He said, from his tone at that time I could basically tell. It seems later he passed away around 1999. He was still a very joyful person. When he spoke, he often had this kind of manner. So for us practitioners to attain a kind of everyday joy, I really think, of course, sometimes when encountering things there might also be suffering, but usually adjusting one's mindset. It seems no matter what happens, if one truly understands it's like a dream, like an illusion, one won't be too attached. Without too much attachment, perhaps one can indeed live quite joyfully. This is called being filled with Dharma joy. We often say filled with Dharma joy. Okay, I'll stop here because this year we've taught the Udāna Sūtra up to this point. If nothing impermanent happens, we'll continue next year, but it's hard to say. Those of us present here, most people should be healthy, but one never knows. How the karmic connection for hearing the Dharma will be, it's hard to say, including any of us. If nothing impermanent happens, we hope next year for the remaining portion we can see if we can complete it all at once. In the past, when I taught the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, it took 4 years, translating as I went, at that time translating the commentary too, translating while teaching. Later it was all completed. So I also pray for the blessings of the 3 roots and Dharma protectors, all of us here in our study and practice, including the Dharma friends in front of the audio and video. I also hope everyone will see it through to the end. Although I don't teach well, sometimes this Dharma is truly very profound. Within it, there are many things that we Buddhists need to understand. So everyone should still look forward to the next installment next year. End of chapter 12.
Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye